Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever Sustainable Earth webinar series. I'm Kelly Saunders, Program Manager at Arizona State University's Rob and Melanie Moulton Sustainability Solutions Service. At the Solutions Service, we work with external partners to inform strategies that advance sustainability out into the world. I'm really excited today to be your co-host for this webinar. At this time, I'd like to welcome my colleague and co-host, Emma Hobson.
Thanks, Kelly. Hi, everyone. My name is Emma Hobson, and I am a program manager in the Julianne Wrigley Global Futures Laboratory here at ASU. And I have the distinct pleasure of working with Wells Fargo to create Sustainable Earth. It's a web portal designed to engage audiences of all ages with tools and education to be more sustainable where you live, work, and play. Following today's session, you will be able to find a recording of today's conversation on the sustainable-earth.org webpage. Today's topic of discussion is Sustainable Purchasing Power and Practice. It's moderated by Erika Ferran, Senior Director of Marketing at the Sustainability Consortium, where she works with members and the sustainability community in general on social and environmental impacts on consumer products. Erika, I'm going to kick it over to you for a welcome and introduction of your panel.
Hi, Emma and Kelly. Thank you so much for introducing me. Again, I'm Erika Ferran. I'm the Senior Director of Marketing, Communication, and Development for the Sustainability Consortium. And I'm going to share some slides here, and we're going to let our other panelists introduce themselves. Let me share this. Okay. All right. All right. So Renee, you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll follow by Catherine?
Sure. So hi, everyone. My name is Renee Eddy. I'm currently a bakery category manager for Fresh Time Market. Prior to that, I was a coffee supply chain sustainability expert working with Fair Trade USA. So I have a lot of experience within purchasing and supply chain sustainability.
Thanks, Renee. And Catherine?
Okay, it's working now, my video. Sorry. Hi, yes. I'm Catherine Bissell-Cordova. I'm Executive Director of Chicago Fair Trade. I'll explain what that is in a little bit, but Renee serves on our board and invited me to be part of this today. So thank you very much.
Well, Renee and Catherine, we're so thrilled to have you. Really looking forward to our discussion. And again, for those of you in attendance, if you have questions while we're presenting or even after we're presenting, please put them in the chat and we'll try to get to as many as we can. So to kick this off, I'm just going to go through a quick description of what the Sustainability Consortium is and what we do and why we care about certifications. And if you're unfamiliar with us, we are a nonprofit research program that sits under ASU. We're in the Global Futures Laboratory. And we also have staff over at the University of Arkansas and at Wageningen University in the Netherlands. So we are mostly university staff working on a great mission together. So again, we're a global organization of diverse stakeholders, and we work together to use the best sustainability science that these universities have to offer to help companies make the everyday products we use better and more sustainable. So we were founded about 12 years ago after seeing some of the stats that you see here, where you see 60% of greenhouse gas emissions and 2/3 of deforestation and 80% of water withdrawals are caused by the manufacturing of consumer goods. And so we were really created to help bold, innovative, and measurable change happen just as soon as possible, working with the industry and nonprofits and higher ed and academia together. So we realized all those years ago that in order to make change and in order to work on climate change issues, we have to incentivize and support manufacturers and their suppliers to adopt new practices and design better products, more sustainable products. Now, we wish all companies just did it for the sake of doing it because it's good for the planet and it's good for people, but we know that there are a lot of companies out there that need reasons and incentives to actually change their practices to create more sustainable consumer goods. And there's really a couple different ways that we help do that. One is we incentivize and show cost savings, risk management, those kind of business terms for companies. When you adopt sustainable practices, you save money, you create less risk, you make things safer for your staff, all sorts of different things. There's all sorts of reasons why companies can make more sustainable products, but The number one pressure, which has grown increasingly over the past couple of years, is consumers, people buying things. Everybody notices when you start purchasing one product over another, the salespeople notice. It's the biggest sort of megaphone we all have is in our purchasing power or our non-purchasing power as well. Lots of stats talking about why consumer products are becoming more popular with consumers, and we'll get into that in a little bit. I'm mostly showing this slide to show some of the impact areas that we at TSC cover, and a lot of these are through ASU research. We work on things like system change and agriculture and food systems and ecological impacts, forest, circular economy, which is obviously very popular, and then human and community well-being. So this is a little bit of a complicated slide, but I'll talk about the theory of change here. So on the left side of your screen is basically all the companies that are producing the goods that you buy. So these could be farms, growers, manufacturers, smelters, mines, whatever the product is that you're buying, from cell phones to food, anything that you buy is being made over there on the left side, and on the right side is you, the consumer, purchasing these things. And in between the companies making these products and you, the people buying them, is the retailer. And so we really work with the left side of the screen to work with suppliers and manufacturers and retailers to not only better communicate your sustainability progress, but to basically focus on the sustainability impacts within the supply chain, which ones, if tackled, have the greatest impact. A lot of companies are frozen. They don't know where to start. They don't know what sustainability issue to tackle first. They don't know what makes the most sense. And through the science and research that we do, we sort of help them hone in and figure out what those issues are and how they can tackle them. But again, the right side of the screen, unbelievably more important every single year than when TSC was founded 12 years ago. Consumers are demanding sustainable products, transparent ingredients, and we're going to talk a little bit about why certifications are so important there. So this is an example of a supply chain that we cover. There's a lot of other research behind it, and I took all that out so you can really focus. So this is what we call sweet and savory bakery items, so muffins, those kind of things. So you can see on the top left is the farm or the grower where those ingredients are grown, and then the plant that processes them, so flour, wheat, sugar, all those kind of things. Dairy, if you're going to include animal ingredients, and then you've got more manufacturing, you've got the preparing and baking and the packaging, you buying them at Starbucks or wherever you're buying them, or you're making them at home, eating them, consuming them, and then what you do with the packaging afterwards. So one of the things that TSC focuses on are those little orange circles that you see. We've identified particular hotspots within the supply chain that have huge sustainability issues. And if you start to measure and track and improve them, they make huge progress for you as a company to make more sustainable products. You can see some of the particular sustainability issues we tackle there. So animal welfare, climate and energy, food waste, land and ecosystems, and others. You can see, according to TSC research, many of the sustainability issues are in the beginning of the supply chain. So where those things are grown, in the ground that they're grown on, and the people that work on those farms, and also in the preparing and baking. So in the factories, in the kitchens, those kind of things. So this is just a quick look at some of the work that we do here at TSC to help focus. We help measure, companies measure by using things called KPIs, key performance indicators. So this, for instance, is a question we would ask a company that's producing dairy. And we're asking them, you know, in your organization, how do you manage labor rights risks? So labor rights, you know, on a farm, the people that are working there. And so we get a lot of companies that answer A, we're unable to determine. They have no idea how to measure their labor rights. Those companies are not producing sustainable products. They're not really doing anything in the current moment to improve that. However, we see that once companies actually start thinking about it and preparing to manage it, they improve it very quickly. So this is an example of one question that we answer. Usually every category that we ask companies to answer has 15 of these questions. And they're actually quite difficult to answer, but if you can answer them, it means that you're doing what's right and you're doing the right thing for your supply chain. So I'm going to talk about certifications really quickly and how that all feeds into what I just talked about. So certifications can help track many different issues, and you as a person, consumer, really should think about what are the issues that you really care about, and then identify those certifications. And that way you can recognize them on products that you're thinking about purchasing. A certification, to those of us that work in the industry, means a lot of things, because companies that are certified by some of these labels have done the work and the homework to meet the certification. So we know that they measure at a certain level. There's two examples here, wild caught fish and textiles. This is from our research. So in the wild caught fish category, about 24% of brands that are supplying wild caught fish to wherever you buy them from, Whole Foods, Walmart, anywhere, have excellent transparency into their labor rights, meaning that they probably are what's called MSC certified. You'll see that in the middle in the sort of darker blue. Now, MSC certified seafood is very sustainable seafood, and the certification is quite rigorous. So companies that can meet that certification have very sustainable seafood for you as a consumer to eat and purchase for your families. It's probably something most consumers don't know about, because consumer knowledge on seafood certifications is actually pretty low. And not sure why that is. It's just that they're not quite interested or aware of it yet. Now, on the other side of the slide is textiles. And textiles have all sorts of different certifications that you can pay attention to, and ones that you've probably heard of. Now, in contrast to wild caught fish, 73% of textile companies have certifications, are aware of specifically their labor rights. And some of that is because consumers are really aware of what's going on in the clothing that they buy, and they hold companies accountable. They're not quite doing that with seafood companies yet, but they will. So if the seafood companies aren't ready yet, they should be, because the consumers are going to come for them. So this is all example of how important certifications are, and how consumer knowledge of certifications can really push companies to adopt these certifications and put them out there. There's a couple other down at the bottom. There's a lot of different certifications. And I know Renee and Catherine are going to sort of cover certifications from their particular point of views. So I'll stop presenting right now, and I'm going to throw it to Renee to talk a little bit about what she's working on with certifications.
Great. Hello, everyone. Let me share this. Hold on just one moment. All right, I'm hoping everyone can see that. If not, someone can send me a little message. But I kind of just wanted to give a little overview of certification. So I think the beginning thought of certification is really to think about who benefits from it. So, you know, Erika touched on this a little bit. You know, it is starting with the farmers and the workers. So with my experience working with Fair Trade USA, really understanding labor issues, maybe it's climate change, different factors that go into sourcing from agricultural products. And then the next benefit from certification is going to be certificate holders. So whether it's the vendor or the broker, any intermediary within the supply chain, all the way up to market partners and consumers. So I think the big thing to first recognize about certification is that it is a way to have a third party verify items within your supply chain. So, you know, one of the biggest challenges and opportunities within a lot of supply chains is traceability, and ensuring that the product is being traced all the way from the where it's grown or where it's produced all the way out to retail sale. You know, one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of touch on this is looking at it from different perspectives. So there's the brand and vendor perspective of really making sure that you're, you know, sourcing from people that have great labor support within their agricultural supply chain, or maybe the manufacturer that you're working with in terms of textiles is, you know, has great labor and working conditions. So it gives a lot of brand value. But then I think from the retailer perspective in the work that I'm doing now, there's a lot of ways to leverage making decisions about which brands you source and what you choose to carry within your retail location, and how that really tells your own sustainability story also from the retailer perspective. All right, so I just wanted to give a couple of stats really quick. So this is from 2020 or probably 2019, the research was done, but Sustainable products sell around 5% higher than conventional products in 3 key segments. So a lot of this is around the food industry, which is where a lot of my focus has been. It was predicted that in 2021, there would be around $150 billion of sustainability-minded sourced goods. And then it's about 64% of more than half of US households actually say that they buy sustainable products, which is up 4 percentage points from a year prior. So a couple more stats for you guys about why it's important to consider sustainability and also certification within your supply chain. So, I had touched a little bit on consumers earlier. So 19% report when asked that sustainability is a really important factor when they're choosing which foods to eat. So Erika touched on that a little bit with seafood. People are really looking to understand where their food came from, not only in terms of traceability and location, but also ensuring that workers are treated fairly, that the environment is doing well, if it's like in a Rainforest Alliance type certification. So there's different certifications to verify different key ways to evaluate your supply chain. 79% of consumers want to know that a company is mindful of its practices and will become loyal customers when they do. So people that purchase with sustainability in mind have a tendency to become loyal followers and loyal shoppers. So, if that's a commitment to your brand, if you're producing, an item, or if that's a commitment to your store and your retail locations, if you're a retailer. So almost half of consumers are more likely to trust a company's claims if they are backed up by proof. And to me, that's one of the biggest shout outs to certification, right? So within the coffee industry, there's a lot of conversation around direct trade versus fair trade. So really understanding what is something that a third party is verifying the support of something versus what is something that's just a marketing claim that retailers or brands are making. So it's kind of like the conversation around, is it natural as a product, as a food product, or is it certified organic? We have a lot more faith and comfort in ensuring that what we're sourcing is certified organic. So I just kind of wanted to touch on, from a business perspective, some of the key functions of certifications. So I have a sampling of different certifications up here. And I think the key thing to think about from a business perspective is that you have that third-party verification. It ensures traceability, whether it's all the way from source produced all the way to retailer shelf. There's tracking of financials, so who paid whom for which product. And then there's auditing standards. So all of these certifications have a strict checklist, so to say, of what they're auditing the supply chain for to ensure that they're backing up those claims that we're saying to consumers. I think another really big thing to touch on with certification is that a lot of these certifications are NGOs or nonprofits. But they're also working collaboratively in that space. So in terms of a Fair Trade USA or Fair Trade International, Rainforest Alliance with coffee, a lot of those organizations are then working with USAID or other groups that are seeking to support producers within their supply chain. A lot of times too, from retailer and brand perspective, perhaps something comes up that we shy away from, whether it's child labor, whatever these kind of key factors that pop up within our supply chains that businesses, kind of run away from telling the truth of what's kind of going on. So, a third-party certification can help verify with that. And I think one of the key factors is also working collaboratively with these NGOs and with these certification organizations. Nothing is black and white, and nothing is an absolute determination. Everything is kind of a work in progress. So the more effort that we put into supporting our certifications and supporting these NGOs, we're actually looking to kind of increase support within the supply chains. Another big function of that is that a lot of these certification organizations work with businesses and work with foundations to do some leveraged funding projects. When I was working with Fair Trade USA, there were a lot of coffee origin projects that we were working on, whether it was housing or scholarships, but really trying to work on how do we drive more incentive and more support back to the producers that are creating the products that we're selling. And then I think, just the inherent bit of navigating supply chain risk. So when you're looking at third-party certifications, there's a lot of things that you can, whether it's making sure that you have access to supply later, in terms of thinking about climate change and what certifications work towards ensuring that, the producers are being supported in their how they're putting into growth. Or perhaps it could be something along the lines of looking for auditing data on trying to find non-conformance of different fertilizers that are being used. So where within your supply chain to start looking if there's, talk of Roundup that's coming in. So all different ways to kind of like navigate that supply chain risk as a business. And like I said before, I think it's multifaceted on thinking of, there's the brand certification and the manufacturer working directly with these certifying bodies for their supply chain, but also for retailers, certifications can be a great entry into how they start telling their sustainability story. By making those decisions when they're purchasing, you start to look at it a little bit differently. So in my current role with sourcing with bakery, a lot of things that I look at is I create vendor scorecards and I analyze what my business partners are doing, working on packaging. How are they seeking to give back to the environment? What are those key decisions that I can make with purchases in my supply chain to sell to consumers that also help, sustainability goals as a company? So I think there's a multifaceted way of kind of looking at certifications and how they support supply chains. So that's just kind of a brief overview, and then I'll pass it off to my peer, Catherine, to kind of touch on the Chicago Fair Trade perspective.
Renee, really quick before we hand it off, we do have a question from a participant wondering if the B Corp certification is similar to these that you have mentioned here on the slide, or how it differs, if you could speak to that a bit.
Sure. So B Corp is going to be a little different than what I have posted on this slide. So B Corp is going to look at overall business. So they have an auditing process. You can actually go to their website and you can start kind of self-auditing your business. I did that in grad school for a couple of organizations that I work with. But just to look at your business in circularity and as a whole. The other great thing about B Corp, it's kind of a rating system. It's very collaborative. I've heard that their support for businesses from different partners that I've worked with is amazing, that it's a very collaborative network of resources of businesses that are trying to work for good. So they very often host a lot of really great seminars for their business partners and seek to grow relationships from business to business, which I think is a great thing about certification. Fair Trade does that as well. How do we take the best of and our best practices and share that with others to promote that benefit. So like I said, a lot of these things that I have up on here, whether it's FSC or Rainforest Alliance, those are looking at commodities and ingredients within the supply chain, and B Corp is looking at the business as a whole. So it could even have to do with, the building that you're running out of, how your sales supply chain works, how you work with your labor within your business, whether it's retail sales or manufacturing. So B Corp to me looks at, kind of big, broad business at a higher level than these commodity views.
Great. I'll take over. Renee, can you stop sharing your screen, please? And I will share mine. So hello. Yeah, I'm, as they said before, I'm Catherine Bissell Cordova, or I guess I said that before. And I am director of Chicago Fair Trade. We love B Corp. We partner with B Corp. Let me try to figure out, how do I go back here? One sec. Okay, here we go. So yeah, so I'm director of Chicago Fair Trade. We are an organization that was founded in originally in 2005 as a project of Oxfam, which is the international anti-poverty organization that had done a whole lot of work with fair trade in Europe over the years, where it's very commonplace. But even then, not that long ago, I mean, fair trade here in the United States as a movement is really quite new. And it was really nice to hear you, Erika, speaking, and you, Renee, speaking. But now, what we really did in the beginning was just getting people to stop and think at all about their purchasing power, which was really kind of something people didn't talk about or think about much, even just 15 years ago, and it's really exploded. And when they did, then, you know, the farm to table movement became big, and people did talk a lot about sustainability, but really left out the labor piece a lot. And that always just drove me crazy. I come from a human rights, worker rights background. But now it's come along so much more, people's concept of what sustainability means, and knowing that it means, you know, aside from the environmental piece, the labor piece. So what we do at Chicago Fair Trade, our tagline is to educate, activate, and celebrate. Why isn't this working? There we go. There you see our mission statement. And we really, I'm not going to read it to you. You guys can read, but when you say about cultivating a community, that's where we really are strongest. We're really good at bringing people together who share these same values, that are looking through these seals and certifications and people come at it from different angles. Some people come at it because they're very interested. Like I just said, I was like, the labor right piece was really important to me. It's all important to me, but that's what brought me into fair trade. Others come at it from an environmental angle. Others come from it from an anti-trafficking angle. But we bring all these people together and build community, and really try to make it a living, breathing thing. And not, I mean, the seal is very important to look for certification, but it's so much more than that. It's really creating a community based on the values that those seals represent. So here you see some examples back pre-COVID, when we would have lots of different gatherings. There was a fair trade dinner party with fair trade certified food products and fair trade tabletop. You know, we also do a lot around clothing, because there is such problem with fast fashion, and now ultra fast fashion, and people buying 4 times as many clothes as they did 20 years ago that end up in landfill, made by people paid too little. So we had a mending circle here at one of our business members here. We had a nice happy hour that we used to do quite often. Another thing that we've always really focused on too, we really see ourselves as building a movement, and really leading a movement here in the US, here in Chicago Fair Trade. We're the biggest grassroots fair trade coalition in the US. And so we've really always focused on youth leadership, because we need to bring youth into a movement if you want to ensure the future of a movement and make sure it's sustainable. And also, you know, a lot of times students too, they don't have a lot of money yet, but they're just, you know, we work with high school and college students, but really showing them too, like you're being pitched your whole life to become a consumer, and what kind of consumer do you want to be? And if you're going to go into business, what kind of business do you want to run? So we work a lot with high school students here. On the left there, that's Whitney Young High School, which is Michelle Obama's alma mater. It's a big deal school here in Chicago. And we partnered with them to make them a fair trade school, which means they source fair trade products. They teach fair trade in their curriculum and do fair trade activities. And there they were at Fair Trade Campaigns, which is a national organization, presenting on the main stage about how you could be a fair trade school. While doing all of this, we like to have fun too, because fair trade is an alternative to a lot, you know, it combats a lot of problems. It combats poverty, wages, it combats child labor and slavery, forced labor, but there is an alternative, which are these fair trade cooperatives, fair trade groups that we all can support and have fun and be joyous in doing so. So fair trade also leads itself to a lot of great ways to bring people together. In February, we always do talk about chocolate and how important it is to look for a certification when you're buying chocolate, and especially in a field where there's so much child labor involved in the cacao industry. In April, we focus on fashion. Fashion Revolution is recognized, and there are activities in the last week of April. We just finished Fashion Revolution, and that is to commemorate the lives of 1,138 Bangladeshi garment workers who were killed in the worst industrial accident of this century on April 24th, 2013. So we bring together students, we have a fashion show, workshops, all sorts of different events. This Saturday, May 8th, is World Fair Trade Day. It's always the second Saturday of May. It's the day before Mother's Day. And every year we do a big event. We do the biggest one in the US here in Chicago. This is something where we for many years, we're right in the center of downtown. You see on the bottom right hand, there's normally a farmer's market, and we take over and sell all fair trade products there. Our different business members, we have 60 locally owned businesses who sell fair trade products. They're there selling, handing out fair trade bananas. You always have someone who wants to wear the banana suit. We moved it a couple of years ago over to Michigan Avenue, which in Chicago is kind of the epicenter of consumerism. There's a lot of big box stores, a lot of very anti-fair trade, non-certified products being sold. But so we thought, let's bring it right there and really reach consumers where they are shopping, and have done events there as well. And we pop up throughout the city, throughout the year, talking to youth, talking to anyone selling fair trade products, talking fair trade. And kind of our signature big event, I've been executive director since 2014. And that first year I did it, I said, let's do a pop-up shop. And sadly in Chicago, that we have a lot of fair trade businesses, but not a whole lot of, we don't have a full dedicated fair trade store right now in Chicago. It's harder in the bigger cities. But so we popped up and we invited our business members to participate. We just did it this year in spite of COVID. As you'll see here, we always use it as a chance to educate folks. Here on our little sticker saying stand 6 feet apart, we have all the fair trade principles behind the labels and certifications. Right now we are doing a 3-week, 3-part long challenge. You can go to our website, which I'll list at the end, but where we've got resources there. We're working with a lot of high school students where, under the educate, you can click on links. These are all hyperlinked to different podcasts, films, TV shows. There's also petitions to support fair trade campaigns that are going on to support workers that are, fair trade, and to celebrate, because we always have to celebrate all of this. I had put another slide in there. Here you go. But one thing that Renee said, and that really struck me too, in talking about certification, we had this event as part of our World Fair Trade Day 3-week challenge. This is an event people could attend. Renee met this woman, Fatima Ismail, who is a leader of a large fair trade coffee cooperative in Nicaragua. And we were talking to her and saying, what do you want us to tell consumers about, looking for the seal and the fair trade seal, and why, we hear a lot about direct trade coffee right now. Can you tell us from a coffee farmer perspective, what, the difference? And she said, was something that Renee touched upon, that some people, I'm not trying to bash everyone who's saying they're direct trade, because some of them are treating the farmers well, but it's their word versus a third-party certified product. And Fatima did not think very highly of the direct trade. She said a lot of people are just taking that term and running with it, and they don't pay a fair trade premium, which is something where when you buy a pound of fair trade coffee with a seal on it, in addition to the farmers getting a fair wage, they get a 20-cent per pound social premium that they use, that the cooperative democratically votes on what to use those funds for. And they go from anything from childcare to school uniforms to health clinics to all sorts of things. So anyhow, we're just always telling everyone how important it is to look for the seal, how you can live your values through it, and so support the kind of world you'd like to live in.
Unmute myself. Catherine, thanks so much. And thank you, Renee. Those are great. We're going to transition into the discussion and Q&A portion of this session. So again, attendees, if you guys have questions for panelists, please put them in the chat. We do have one question that came in while we were presenting, and this sort of goes along with something that we've all sort of touched upon is, and this is for both Renee and Catherine, a lot of consumers are confused by certifications. Some of it is marketing, some of it are actual certifications. How do people kind of like wade through the waters on what are fake, what are real, what's just a marketing ploy to get you to buy the product, sort of what, how do you guys help people kind of navigate through that?
Mm-hmm. I can touch on that to start. I think especially within the coffee industry, that's a really big thing, and food in general. There's a lot with, like I had mentioned earlier, saying that something is all natural. What does that even mean? Saying that something, I I guess for me, the biggest key is for education on part of the businesses and the consumers to really teach what the seals are and what they mean. I think even the third-party certification organizations kind of owe it to consumers to make that seal recognizable. It also drives the value back to the business. So I guess for me, that's the biggest answer, is really learning to understand all of the seals, which is a lot for consumers. I think we get into seal and logo overload, but recognizing that just calling something out as natural or direct trade is very different than fair trade or non-GMO, so to say. So really just consumer and education.
Yeah, and that's we do a lot of that, and we are asked a lot that a lot. But yeah, I mean, I always will say, you know, look for a seal. Any sort of seal is better than none. See if it's just their own claims and their own made up name for something, or if it's like a network of a recognized seal that's a third party certifier, which Renee and I have both have referenced, but that's, meaning it's not just your own claim, it's verifiable by an audit. So those are the main things that we tell people. I also will say, we work a lot with people doing more makers products, not necessarily food products. And so a lot of them are not fair trade certified, but there's also the Fair Trade Federation, which is 270 business members in Canada and the United States, and they're a membership organization, and they vet very heavily. I mean, they're saying, like Renee was saying before too, is like kind of like with B Corp, it's like the whole business is committed to the principles of fair trade. It's not like the product itself gets the seal, like we've been talking about, but the whole organization is a member of a network. And so if I am at a street fair and I see someone and they'll say fair trade, and I'll say, oh, are you part of any fair trade network? And if they say no, I mean, I'm not there to be the fair trade police, but I'll think, well, that's weird, because the principle of fair trade is promote fair trade. And so most our fair trade business members, they want to be involved with fair trade networks. They know each other. They're members of our organization. Many of them are members of Fair Trade Federation. So just digging a little bit and asking that, even if you're a part of something of a network.
Right, we've got a lot of questions coming in. If people want to learn more about certifications, do you either have apps they can download, websites they can visit? Like, where can people learn more about certifications and what they mean?
Well, I would probably start with the Sustainability Consortium there, Erica. I think that would be a great resource. I've seen a couple of different apps pop up. There was a Too Good to Go or something for a little while. There's been several that have popped up. I don't know of any currently off the top of my head, but if there are any that are active, I would also just look to for me, like the biggest start is looking within retailers and really looking at what you see on packaging, and kind of diving in from there. Trade magazines, which if you're a specific business member, or if you're involved in a certain industry, I would definitely go straight to where that starts. So in coffee, there's a very tight-knit coffee community, clothing, whatever your kind of industry of choice is. That would be kind of my start.
Great. And I would say, just to add to that, I think as a buyer, as a person who buys things, it's good to know what you truly care about and understand the certifications in that area. So I think, Catherine, you had mentioned that caring about labor rights sort of brought you to fair trade. So I think, going back to my wild-caught seafood example that I showed before, many people go into the grocery store and they want to buy wild-caught salmon. It looks pretty, and in your mind, you're like, oh, the salmon are like living their best life in these streams, and they're happy, and I'm eating them, and I'm happy. But there's actually a lot of potential sustainability issues with wild-caught salmon that are not present in farm-raised salmon, which most people don't want to potentially purchase farm-raised salmon because in their mind, these salmon aren't out in the wild. But if you care about child labor on these shipping vessels, if you care about fair labor, farm-raised seafood sometimes might be an option for you. So it's really about understanding what is important to you and what certifications are around that, and really understanding them and looking for them. So another question we have coming in, this is an interesting one. So for students interested in going into a career in sustainable supply chains, what positions might they consider targeting out of college? So I know ASU has a big sustainability program. You know, Renee and Catherine, where do you think people should look if they want to get into the kind of work that you guys both do?
There's so many places to start, and everybody that I know has had a different pathway that brought them to sustainability, especially as a career. So my graduate degree is from ASU in their sustainability department. For me, it's starting to network within your school and try to understand where are connections, whether it's different teachers that are working in the school that you're already in, whether it's a business school, and finding internships that way. Another good step into understanding more about sustainability within supply chains is just to start working within retailers and manufacturers in supply chain. I think the way that the world is growing right now, and with consumers having such an interest in holding their businesses so accountable to having sustainability as a mission and a value for the company, sometimes you can make a bigger ripple or a bigger wave in the water by going into an organization that maybe isn't viewed as sustainable and trying to bring in some of the values and beliefs in there. So I think that there's multiple approaches. Right now I'm sourcing for a bakery department. So you would think that, okay, I work for a grocer that puts a lot of emphasis on organic and natural and all these things. So we are sustainable, but how do you look at bakeries? So it's understanding what can you do within your role. So it's sourcing different vendors. It's really understanding the supply chain that you're in. So I think there's so many different avenues on how to approach that.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing you said, and I'm sure you all know this. I know more people that have opened fair trade businesses, but yeah, I mean, there's just going to be more and more of them. I mean, it's been interesting for us to see. A couple of years ago, people weren't talking about supply chain the way they are with COVID, and so a lot of these issues that we've been talking about for years are suddenly front and center and on people's mind and on consumers' mind and on. So I like to think it's a good time that there'll be more and more jobs in the field moving forward.
Yeah, and I just have to say, I did not have a background in sustainability before I took this current job that I've been in for 5 years. So don't let that stop you. If you have a passion for it, pursue it, even if you don't have a degree in sustainability. So it'll pay off for you. Lots of questions coming in. Catherine, this one is for you. Let me find it. Are there any good incentives for customers to buy fair trade?
Incentives. I mean, I think, do you mean just like I think people feel wonderful when they buy fair trade. I mean, it's funny because so we have this pop-up shop, and we get people that would drive 2 hours just to shop there because they're only want to buy fair trade. But most people are we'll have them in high foot traffic areas, and most of them, a lot of them just really never had thought about it. We were actually right next door to an outlet of a big box store that I won't name, but and they'd come in with their shopping bags and then kind of look around and see. So I mean, I people thank us I haven't worked retail except in fair trade, but I don't think this is the case always. I mean, more and more people, they're just thanking us for being there and so I just think people, I'm an optimist, and I think like most people do want to do some good. They're happy when they realize that their spending dollars can go to good, and though it's getting more well known, these terms, fair trade and sustainability and all of this, it's still, we have a long way to go. So I think there's still a lot of people that are just getting to the point when they're starting to even like a light bulbs going on when they're realizing they can even be a part of this. I don't know if I really answered the question.
Well, there was a second part to it that's sort of, what are the effective methods of educating customers on certifications? So, Renee, from Fresh Time Market to, Chicago Fair Trade, sort of what are the best ways that you guys are educating your customers, whether they're consumers or suppliers, on these certifications?
I have 10 years in grocery retailers with another large organic market. So I worked for Whole Foods on and off for 10 years. But for me, I think the biggest thing is starting with team members and starting with employees and management, and those people that are on the front line with customer service, especially working within coffee supply chain. The more that I got team members and employees excited about what was different about their coffee and where coffee comes from, then the more they started having that conversation with customers. So I think that that's really person to person conversation is really important. I was a store manager for a while, and you would be amazed at how many people are so frustrated that they got, terrible oranges at this time of year, or awful strawberries. And you just kind of even mentioned that how far they've come from a place that was filled with drought, and just giving them the perspective of their supply chain, and eyes open up. So for me, it's word of mouth, and really just starting to get people to understand where things come from and how they get to you.
Yeah, and same with us. And I mean, we do a lot of, I think I said, I know I won't turn down an opportunity to come talk, but we do a lot of, teaching in high schools, and working some too on getting curriculum to different teachers, so that it's just becomes something that kids are taught. Because right now in England, we're fair trade, I think it's 1 in every 3 bananas sold in England is fair trade. That they are taught about fair trade in high school, every student, so they know it, so they look for it. So that's, I mean, we're always pushing to teach more and more. And we're well, I'm not allowed to say this yet, but you guys don't live in Chicago. Renee, I don't know if I told, this is on the down low, but we have a activist member teacher, and she's actually working on it. It's looking like all the 9th graders in Chicago public schools are going to be receiving 14 paragraphs on fair trade and what it means starting next year, which is huge for us. So yeah, we just go about it, teaching people about it.
Great. It helps to start all the way from the beginning like that. So another question that came in. So, we've all been talking a lot about, things that grow in the ground, natural commodities. What about traceability and certifications, if either of you can answer, for things like synthetic fibers or plastics? Do you guys have any experience on sort of certifications in those areas, why it's important to understand the transparency supply chains for those particular products rather than seafood and bananas and flour and those things that we've been talking about?
I have some experience with conversations around those. So working with beverage companies on their source for tin, and really starting to dive into understanding minerals. And then I have worked on a couple of projects with packaging and recyclable materials within plastics, less from the sourcing side and more from the output side, or can they be recycled? Are they already made from recycled materials? I think for me, it's really looking at your business as a whole and really understanding the circular economy and doing a lifestyle analysis on your business, and then understanding the implications of things. So you mentioned plastics, and I don't know a ton about sourcing plastics, but for me it's a lot more with minerals and tin, and where those come from, and mining. And I know that there's a lot of movements at GreenBiz. I was having a conversation with someone that works in the mining industry on how do they apply some of other certifications principles to mining. So there's a lot of cross collaboration across industries to kind of start broadening those conversations. I don't know if that helps, but.
I don't know much about
there. Yeah, important one to think about. Okay, another question in for Renee. So how does your group determine sort of what companies to help? And are they mainly coming to you, or are you sort of seeking them out?
So in my current role with working for Fresh Time in category management, I get emails, I get packages, I get phone calls with everyone that wants to bring me their next product. So the first place that I start with any of those is really understanding kind of a basic rating on their business, and just starting to ask those questions. Then there are some that I seek out. If for example, I found a waffle recently that I saw featured on an Oprah blog, and I found out that this organization did great things, and they were gluten-free certified. And I immediately reached out to the company of the waffle and said, hey, are you in retailers? I want to get you in. Please let me be your first. So I think it goes both ways. And then, kind of from the certification side of it, businesses frequently come to the certification, but then also producers come to the certification side. So I know Erika touched on seafood. That's another industry that a lot of fishing communities sought out to become fair trade certified before fair trade certification of fishing communities was a thing. So it kind of goes back and forth, whether it's driven from the business and consumer side or driven from needs from the producer side.
And Catherine, what is the role of NGOs and nonprofits to sort of drive more sustainable business? Oh, I think you're muted.
Well, I mean, I personally think it's important, that's kind of our whole existence of just, because I mean, I don't know if I'm going to answer this very well, but I mean, I think, as I said, like, we're starting a movement, so it's beyond, I mean, if you just have brands saying there's this, that's good, but I mean, it's really making people feel connected. It's making people have more of an impact by us working collectively, and us working collectively too, with an NGO. It's important that people individually think about their consumption, but we as an organization, that's how you get first people to think about it. Like, what are you consuming? What could you change? And it's always incremental, as like you said, pick the one issue that brought you to it, or, really dive down on one thing. I often say to people, like, pick one product in your life, like, that you will switch over. You can't do it all overnight necessarily, but pick one product. But then we push people beyond that. Like, what institutions are you involved with? For example, ASU is a fair trade university, right? But I mean, where can you collectively? And so that's why I think it's important for NGOs, nonprofits to be part of this, to bring, to create the movement, because that's not really something I don't think that brands are going to do.
Great. And sort of the other side of that coin, Renee, how can retailers, effectively use certifications to set their sustainability goals? Sort of, how do they help in that?
Yeah. I think that it depends on what level of business you're looking at. So to kind of answer this from with my retailer hat on, if I'm a retailer, I start with where I'm sourcing products from. So, by reviewing some of these certifications and looking at what they stand for and starting to look for products that carry those seals, I'm starting to then speak to the mission and the values of myself as a retailer and what I'm choosing to, represent in the world. It also gives a way to start, measuring KPIs and measuring impact. So, if you look at, for example, private label coffee is being sourced from somewhere. So the retailer can then look at what is the volume of fair trade coffee that they're buying that's certified, and how many people's lives are that affecting, and start to have those KPIs. And then I think for those brands that are relying on that, it gives them the traceability of looking at their supply chain and really understanding where things come from and how they're sourced and how they give back to the community. But there's also kind of this piece of values behind most of the certifications. So I think by choosing which certification you start with as a business, you're really speaking to what your business goals within sustainability are. So maybe it's certain SDGs or sustainable development goals that you're looking to support. So really trying to align what are these certifications again, and then how do you use your business to go through it.
Great. We probably have just a minute left for us all to kind of leave a closing thought. Catherine, any closing thoughts based on all we've discussed that everybody in attendance should really take away thinking about certifications?
Yeah, I mean, they can be confusing. There's a lot of them. Pick one, learn about that one, pick another one, don't, or as I like, pick the issue that matters most to you. Or pick one product. Just start somewhere. It's incremental. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's the future. It's the way to go.
Renee, any closing thoughts on certifications?
Yeah, I think just from the business perspective, again, start small and figure out where do you begin. I think Erika, you touched on this in your opening. It's so easy to get overwhelmed as a business when you're trying to make decisions on where you even start with sustainability. I also suggest, look from within, look at your own four walls and your employees, and really start to understand how are you guiding your business through your own labor practices, diversity, and start from the ground up and just look to make better decisions as a business. I think the more that we get behind those and the more of our stories that we tell as businesses, the more that we just grow the movements.
Yeah, that's great. It seems like the theme running through all of this is really, educate yourself on what's out there, what certifications are out there. I can tell you, working in sustainability, I get a text daily from someone that's like, can I recycle this? Like literally they text me every single day. And most of the time the answer is no, but it's really good. Like do your research, working in marketing communication in 2019, I probably got 3 calls a week from reporters asking us to comment on the straws. And that was a big deal. If you all remember the straws, there's still a big deal. And straws are a big deal, but there may be bigger deals in the plastics world. And, really educate yourself, understand the sustainability issues, figure out what you care about and what companies are doing to support, those issues, and purchase from those companies and stop purchasing from the ones that don't. They will notice, I promise you.
Yeah,
I want to thank, Renee, go ahead.
Oh no, what you just said, just really the straws comment, I think that nothing can be valued more than really doing a life cycle analysis of your business and looking at it holistically. Consumer perception may be that the straw is the worst thing in the world for the business, when you look at a materiality study and the full business, and you might find out that you can make more of a impact by just having something made out of recycled paper. You never know what those benefits and rewards are until you really dive into that and have some support with that through third party.
Or you may find the new plastic lid that replaces the straw uses more plastic. You never know what you're going to find when you do research. So we could do a whole webinar on straws. So Catherine and Renee, I just want to thank you both. Great and super valuable perspectives, and thank ASU for letting us hold this webinar, and we'll turn it back over to Emma. Thanks so much.
Yes, thank you all for joining us today, and a special thank you to Erika, Renee, and Catherine for that very informative and engaging discussion. I certainly appreciate it. Our next installment in the Sustainable Earth webinar series is on Tuesday, July 13th at 10 a.m. Arizona time, so mark your calendars and be on the lookout for that next invitation to your email. In the meantime, you can visit sustainable-earth.org to discover how you can advance sustainability where you live, work, and play. So on the portal, when you get there, you can find items such as lesson plans, sustainable innovations, and you actually also have access to free custom curated courses specifically for Sustainable Earth visitors, where you can earn a micro-credential in various sustainability topics such as circular economy, sustainable supply chains, and sustainability reporting. So we hope you found value not only from today's discussion, but also in what Sustainable Earth is doing, and hope it further inspires you to take action in your neighborhood. We hope you all have a great rest of your week, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Sustainable Earth webinar series on Tuesday, July 13th. Thank you, everyone.